Hello, today I'm going to talk about how the banks are an extended form of imperialism, an extended form of neocolonialism. I'm going to show you how the banks are worse than traditional slave trade. Please, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. My name is Odonga. I'm a critical thinker. I'm a contemporary philosopher. I am a lawyer. I am an author. And I'm also a scholar. And really, I really want to appreciate for the efforts you've been putting, subscribing to my channel. It gives us a motivation to do more research and ensure that we liberate the African continent. Today, I'm going to be talking about banking. From the traditional sense, many of you will know, I go to this bank, I go to this bank, I borrow money. But for me, as a Pan-Africanist, that is not enough. I am going an extra mile to show you who owns the bank, and if you borrow from this bank and you borrow from this bank, who are you promoting? There are certain banks when you get money from, people are smiling all the way in New York. People are smiling all the way in Geneva because of the profits. And then you watch TVs and say life in Europe is nice. And yet you don't know life in Europe is nice because you are giving them interest. So we are going to talk of Pan-African banking, because if we don't liberate ourselves economically, we are going to get into a phenomena that Odonga prefers to call Bankcolonization. Now, as I stated, banks are institutions that lend money to individuals in the entire African continent. Many countries have developed traditional and local banks. Others have developed local savings and microfinances. In Ghana, in Chad, in Liberia, in Uganda, in Kenya, name it. There is a kind of banking, financial institutions that regulates our funding. But I am of the philosophical opinion that why is it after 50 years of independence the Africans are getting poor? We are not alleviating poverty. To the extent that I have come to a critical thinking that it is because the banking sector has not properly been observed with a critical eye. After independence, we had neoliberalism, which is the second form of colonization. We also had what I now prefer to call Bankcolonization. Next week, I will talk about religious colonization. Now let's look at the entire banking infrastructure and organogram in the African continent. What percentage of the banks are owned by foreigners, by non-Africans, and what percentage are owned by the national or indigenous people, and what percentage are owned by Pan-African banks? In Kenya, 40% of the banking capital and institution is foreign owned. 40%. Which means 60% of the capital and the banks is owned by Kenyans. By ownership, I don't mean only who owns the building and the name of the bank. By ownership, I mean who owns the capital, because the most important thing in the bank is the capital. In Kenya, 40% of the banking institution is foreign owned. In Uganda, my own country, 86% of the banking institution is owned by foreigners. I will come to that later. In Rwanda, 50% of the banking industry is foreign owned, and 50% is owned by the indigenous people. In Nigeria, very interesting, 28% of the banking industry is foreign owned, and 72% is owned by the Nigerians. This is according to World Bank, IMF statistics. But also interestingly, you will look at a country like Nigeria, where majority shareholding of the bank is indigenous. You will still find that 73% of the money coming into Nigeria from the global institution is routed through the foreign banks. This is very interesting. You own 72% of the banks, But the money coming into the country goes through those foreign banks. This is a cartel. This is a racket. Let's go to the micro phenomena of the banking institutions in the country. Let's start with Uganda. Then I'll go to Kenya, I'll do a comparative study in Nigeria. These three countries, and then we can draw a representative sample for the entire African continent. And in law, we say the bulk must correspond to the sample. So let me analyze into detail the conundrums in these three countries. We have Centenary Rural Development Bank. This is an indigenous bank established in 1983 in Uganda by the Catholic Church. It has 77 branches and 81 ATMs in the country. Now let's look at the pattern. Centenary Bank, established in 1983, thousands of branches and ATMs. Other banks established in 1912, a few ATMs. At the end of my show, I will come to point that some banks are agents of imperialism, colonial imperialism. The capital owners are in the capitals of Europe and they come and extract money from the African continent. And someone has to talk about this. I hope you are aware Barclays Bank wound up their operations in Africa because they made money for thousands and thousands of years to the extent that it's transforming its shareholdership. People make money and say, we've had enough. We are closing shop. You make money to the extent that you even don't know what to do with the money you've made, and you rather just close making money from the Africans. Equity Bank, it's a Kenyan bank here in Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, it's a bank established in Uganda. It started as a mortgaging company. In 1967, it transformed into a bank. NSSF has 50%, National Social Security Fund has 50% of the shares, and 49% is owned by the government of Uganda. Indigenous Bank, the leading bank doing 60% of the mortgages. But I'll still come to talk about something that relates to housing finance. If Housing Finance Bank is an indigenous bank, it is making huge profits. The other time they brought a motion when I was still in Parliament, asked Parliament to recapitalize Housing Finance Bank. And I asked them, wait a minute, where do you deposit the profits you make? Because it is a government institution, where do you deposit the profits you make? The interest rates are the same like for the other banks. So there is some kind of animal farm institution. People, when you are looking at Housing Finance Bank, look at it like your bank. So we need to know where the dividends and profits are deposited and why they would need you, the taxpayers, to recapitalize the bank that is making profits. When you go to the bank, just don't look at the television, look at the wall. They have the income statement for the previous financial year, profits and losses. You will see huge profits being made by banks. Dfcu Bank in Uganda, established in 1964, pretty interesting. We all know Dfcu bought Crane Bank. But let's pick interest and find out who are the shareholders in Dfcu Bank. Information is wealth. There are certain things people don't want you to know. Let's look at the shareholders of Dfcu. Foreign owned. Arise BV, 58.71% of shares in Dfcu. CDC Group UK, 9.97%. NSSF, the National Social Security Fund in Uganda, 7.69%. Kimberlite Frontier African Nasta, it's also a shareholder in Dfcu Bank, 3.22%. SSBC Conrad Hilton Foundation, 2.9%. Vanderbilt University, 0.87% shares in Dfcu Bank. So universities in Europe also own shares in the bank. You borrow money, you're making those universities rich. You go to study in those universities, you also take them more money. You are actually worse than Tipo-Tip. Tipo-Tip will take you from Muscat to Zanzibar. You carry one ivory trunk and you are given an option to become a domestic servant. This banking is daily. Even when you are sleeping, the interest is increasing. So you will see that these banks are predominantly foreign, and they're here milking money from the African continent. So let's get this right. For the Ugandan case, the traditional banks, owned, built in Uganda, made in Uganda, Centenary Rural Development Bank, Housing Finance Bank, Post Bank. We killed our own traditional banks. You killed Crane Bank, which was a traditional 100% owned Ugandan owned bank. You suffocated National Bank of Commerce in Kigezi. You sold UCB. I'll come to Kenya. Kenya has Kenya Commercial Bank. We sold Uganda Commercial Bank. We closed Uganda Cooperative Bank. Kenya has Kenya Cooperative Bank. You closed it for Uganda Commercial Banks. Instead of selling the business interests, you sold even the building. For heaven's sake, if there is a managerial problem in a financial institution, you change the management. You don't sell the building. You sold UCB Bank building and you named it Cham Towers. You sold Uganda Cooperative Bank branches all over the country to Stanbic Bank. You sold the national assets instead of selling the management. And strangely, I can say, the sellers were also the buyers. Those who have interest in Ugandan politics, pick interest here. When they were selling UCB, the annex of Uganda Commercial Bank, the annex was sold on Christmas Day. It was not even part of the main report. It was a donation on Christmas Day. And other than saying you sold our banks, we are also saying, where did you put the money? So in Uganda, Uganda Commercial Bank, closed. Uganda Cooperative Bank, closed. Crane Bank, suffocated. National Bank of Commerce, suffocated. But also in the country, we have banks which are Pan-Africanist bank that deserve support. Equity Bank is in Uganda, it's Kenyan. KCB is a Kenyan bank, it's doing good business in Uganda. GT Bank, Guarantee Trust Bank, the biggest shareholders are Nigerian. In the spirit of Pan-Africanism, it is also good to do business with Pan-African banks, including EcoBank and United Bank of Africa. But you need to look at the shareholders of any financial institution before you deal with it. Because every profit made out of the bank is plowed to Europe, to the owners of the capital. So you are making them richer. And then you start saying you want to go to Europe. You are making them richer here. When we go to Kenya, National Bank of Kenya, 48% is owned by the Treasury and 20.7% are the ordinary shares, the rest owned by the Social Security Fund of Kenya. Indigenous Kenyan Bank. KCB, Indigenous Kenyan Bank. Equity, Indigenous Kenyan Bank. Cooperative Bank, huge Kenyan bank. I&M Bank, huge Kenyan banks. And in Kenya, there are very many SACCOs, savings and cooperative societies. That is why the banking sector in Kenya is controlled by the locals. Only 40% is controlled by foreign institutions. Kenya is huge. Now let's make a quick comparison from a historical and political science perspective. Why is the Kenyan banking industry more developed than the Ugandan banking industry? In Kenya, when they were looking for independence, the British colonized Uganda and Kenya. The British created a colony in Kenya. And they came to Uganda, they created a protectorate. Now, look at this difference. Look at this. This is very interesting as a political scientist. When the white man came to Kenya because of the good weather, they never expected to leave. So they created a colony and a settler colony. A settler colony. When they came to Uganda, they created a protectorate for growing cash crops. Now, this determined the nature of struggle for independence. When the Kenyans were struggling for independence, they were struggling so that the black man can do the same thing the white man was doing. We can run the banks, we can run Delamere farms, we can do the same things you do. And that defined the nature of independence struggle. So the Kenyan economy is Kenyan owned because the black man did exactly what the white man was doing and preferably better. The nature of independence struggle was a struggle for our thing. The struggle came without a development of a middle class or a business class to run the same businesses that the whites were doing. So our economy is foreign owned, unlike the Kenyan economy. You should even thank President Idi Amin. The economy would be 100% foreign owned. So the nature of the settler pattern, the nature of establishment by the colonial administration determined. So in Kenya, pretty good news. They own the banking industry. And the circles have grown. Kenyans borrow money from fellow Kenyans. In Nigeria, we have Polaris Bank, Fidelity Bank, Eco Bank, Absa Bank, Access Bank, United Bank of Africa. But look at this. The Nigerians own 86% of the banking industry. What does it mean? It means the foreign banks are only barely 24%. But because the white man is very intelligent, every international money being transferred into Nigeria goes through that 24% foreign-owned banks. This is where African governments should wake up and say, World Bank, IMF, United Nations, FIFA, if you're sending us money, please use the traditional banks so that we can also benefit from the international transfers. So we have become wise. We went to school. We know these things. So the African borrowers are making European countries rich. Let me ask one very interesting question. What does Britain sell to the world? What does Britain, United Kingdom, what do they sell to the world? Just think of any product. What do they sell to the world? Cars? Have you seen any British car? Phones? What does Britain sell to the world? You will not see any British product. Where are you? They sell information. Almost with Americans, other than Red Bull, they sell information. Information is power. You need to transfer money from Uganda to Kenya. It has to go through the international system, through Britain, through United States, through the HSBC Bank. That is where they effect all the transfers at a fee. Then the money comes to your neighboring country. This is where African governments have to wake up. We don't hate anyone, but we don't like certain practices. So what's the way forward? One, there is need for African governments in Malawi, Zambia, Mozambique to reinstate the traditional banks that were closed because of structural adjustment programs. This will be another topic for another day. We need to reinstate the traditional banks, and we need to use our national budgets to recapitalize these banks and ensure that they offer money to Africans at a cheap rate. Two, we need to promote our own. We need to promote our own regional and Pan-Africanist financial institutions. Someone is having a good holiday in Bahamas, a good holiday in Hawaii. It is being funded by you. And then you also pay for a television channel to watch them, how they are taking a holiday. So survival for the fittest. Even in a plane, they say, in case the oxygen mask, in case the plane runs out of oxygen, an oxygen mask will fall. But they say, please help yourself before helping the person next to you. So help yourself, help your indigenous banks. Thank you to the indigenous banks. Help your regional banks. Help your Pan-Africanist banks. What else should be done? In my country, Uganda, they sign an MOU that all the teachers and civil servants' salary would move from Uganda Cooperative Bank, from Uganda Commercial Bank to Stanbic Bank. This has legal issues. Well, you can sell the financial institutions, but you cannot sell me, my account. The doctrine of freedom of contract. People should be able to choose the banks they put their money in. If you are selling a car, do you even sell the driver with the car? No. We need to recapitalize local banks. Foreign capital creates capital flights. If we don't do what I'm saying, Africans will be poor, and you'll be praying for aid and loan from the Western world. What you call aid and loan from the Western world are the taxes these shareholders of your government pay in their countries, and then they bring them back to your continent. You need to buy shares in local banks. Buy shares. If you see them floating shares, many of the local banks in African continent, they float shares. They advertise to buy shares. Buy shares on a bank. Even if you have $1,000 in a bank, for every money being borrowed, 0.0% of that income is yours. Own shares. And lastly, save. Many governments in Africa have opened village savings and cooperative schemes. Save. In my country, they call it SACCOs. It is saving and credit cooperative organizations. You first save, then you borrow. But many people want to borrow even before saving. It is called SACCO. It is not called CASO. So it is saving and credit cooperative organization. If we cut the money leaving the African continent through banking institution, you would have played a role in fighting bank colonization. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel. And for your information, I'll be releasing videos every Monday for the whole year. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, suggest topics, I do research, and we talk about it. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and take care. Thank you.